Both Bob and Jerry had served in the missions as young missionaries. Bob as a Christian brother, Jerry as a Jesuit, and their experiences, their theological base as a Christian brother and as a Jesuit profoundly affected them. Then, in addition to their theological base, they had direct experiences with working in the missions, and what they found most valuable about that experience was the personal relationships that they established with people in the missions.
Bob's experience in Colombia and in Guatemala of working with families, of going there thinking he was going to be solving problems and bringing solutions, but really having a conversion type experience there of realizing that a lot of the answers were already there.
He was teaching at a very fine school, but on the weekends he would venture outside the school grounds into the neighborhoods. And he told me how transformed he was.
He really made a fundamental transition from being a teacher to being a student.
And then Jerry, of course, was similar to Bob. He had a lot of experience in the missions, a deep desire to continue to help the families that they had met and introduce those families to families here.
And that's, I think, the seed that CFCA and then later Unbound grew from, was this sense that we are following the families rather than leading or instructing.
So they had that concept. As they would have stated themselves, this was nothing new. But the way that we go about doing it is unique and beautiful. Bud and Jim brought those other aspects to the program, part of the organizational aspects and the spirit of it. So they were already familiar with what sponsorship was. So they went into the mechanics of how do you make this relationship happen.
Nadine was was a maternal presence.
She was the older sister, and she would often give them advice as an older sister.
And she also provided a wonderful example to all of us of service. She was here, although she was a board member and later an emeritus board member and a founder, all these roles, she took on the humble role of volunteer on a daily basis and really showed us, I think, what it means to be a servant of something that's bigger than you.
She often, in the early days, had them all over at her house when they'd have board meetings, or they had out-of-town people from overseas coming in town. She hosted them. So she started a lot of those early days of just gathering together, talking about it.
One of the pieces that I noticed right away with the founders is that they weren't scared to argue about what ought to be, what ought to happen next, but then they knew how to keep that team together and to make it work. They were very comfortable in one another's presence. They knew how to express themselves well, and they knew how to take the next step in what had to be done.
The founders had an incredible zeal. They were facing amazing obstacles. It was not at all clear that this was going to be successful for many of those early years.
They guided us all to the families. The families are Bob's original source of inspiration. We continue to keep that in the forefront of our minds, that we have a commitment to continue to learn from the very communities we claim to serve.
To this day, Unbound still benefits from each of the attributes of our founders. It couldn't have happened without them and with the way that they each assisted each other.